Is
You're on live.
no, we're not live.
Yep. It says you're on live.
We're not live. No, we're not live. We're not live.
Yeah, we're not live. We're just
We are.
Memorex.
We are not live.
Yeah, we're not live.
Trying to get comfortable. I don't know. Trying to. All right. Hi, Steph.
Hi.
You're on live.
Yeah, you're on live.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was Stephanie's laugh. Auntie Stephanie. What a wonderful woman. I got to tell you, she's just a gem. She's a gem. We are two of the luckiest men on earth, Charles. You know,
I know I'm very lucky.
bro. I mean, the two of us, we don't even deserve our wives, but we are blessed. We are blessed. Blessed.
You know, I deserve my wife, but you know, like I always tell my friends, if anything happened to me, suspect one is Stephanie. No.
Yeah. Anyway, how's everybody doing on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon?
Tell everybody that you suspect number one.
Try. You know what? Wait, Steph. Wait till about wait till about 7 when we get, or 7:10 when we get all the viewers on, and then just whack them in the back of the head with the frying pan like you did on our third show. Remember on the third, Charlie? Remember our third show when she would whack you with that frying pan?
Yes. Now I have 2 walks.
Hey, my wife is watching from Oregon. Aloha, Patsy. Miss you.
Right.
God dang,
Hey,
man. I
Patsy.
tell you what. I was talking all big before she left. I was saying, yeah, I'm gonna hit the bars, man. I'm going back clubbing. I'm gonna be a bachelor. Last night I cried myself to sleep. I was so lonely.
You didn't tell me that. I already knew that.
But you know, I'm gonna tell you, as we're talking about how blessed we are, before my wife left, she had what do you call it? Meal prep. She had meal prep. If you open up my ice box, get all the meals individually packed. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I think she only went to Wednesday. But my mother-in-law, her mom came by last night and brought over some nishime. Charlie. All right, Charlie. So what that did was my Monday now is a Tuesday, and my Tuesday. So now I'm good till Thursday.
When Thursday come and no more anything, then what?
Dominoes.
No, you just went delay the inevitable.
I know.
But you know what's funny is we can talk big, but the moment we stay by ourselves, I see like this in the house, like before when she would travel for business, go Honolulu. I stay in the house in a corner looking at the TV, they're not even on with this stare
Yeah.
the whole night.
It's not even fun watching TV without her, man. It's just not even fun. It's crappy. But I will say this, and you can tell by my demeanor, I'm obviously much more relieved today than I was yesterday. Last week was Hell Week for Patsy and I. Hell Week. It was Hell Week, Charlie, as it was for you with your you lost a loved one as well. But she got to Oregon last night. My daughter Nikki was already sleeping. And I wish I had a picture. I mean, I do have a picture. I should have get it set up. But Patsy is in the spacesuit. She has the isolation suit, the shield, the N95 mask, the gloves. And anyway, yeah, wife of the year, mom of the year, wife of the year. Obviously, it goes to Patsy. Anyway, real quick, my daughter woke up this morning to a nice bowl of rice soup.
Choke.
And never have all the turkey stuff and all of that. It was just rice soup, and she ate. The first time in 10 days, she ate. And then lunch, Patsy made fried rice. She ate. For dinner, Patsy made chicken long rice. She ate. I spoke to her twice today, maybe even three times, my daughter, and she's a different person today. And I
Like
am
yeah,
freaking beyond happy.
I
I
told
am
you, brother.
so really, yeah, yeah, Charlie,
Like,
you pegged
yeah,
it. You pick. I mean, I kind of knew it, but there was, there's always that, because Charlie, you know this, man. And I was just praying last night. I prayed so hard that she would turn around, and she did. And
oh, I tell you, you gotta,
not not
you
out of the
gotta have
woods
faith,
yet.
brother. You
Yeah, no,
gotta
I
have faith.
do. Trust me, I do. But I know this COVID is freaking relentless.
No, but what gonna happen is the fact that your daughter's mommy is there. It's that
How?
daughter-mommy relationship.
How?
That's the key. Yeah.
COVID,
Yeah.
COVID cannot break that. COVID could not touch that.
Yep. Yep. You know, my son, I give a good, when I miss my sons, but usually I have my little one or my Jonathan. You know, what's funny is they grown up, their families of their own, my grandchildren as their parents. But if I don't see my sons for a while, they're the type, they come back home and they jump in bed with me and the wife. And I tell them, hey, go jump in your bed. Oh, Dad, I miss you. You get that closeness with your kids. And that's why everybody said, oh, you're real close to your sons. Now keep in mind now, my children are only my stepchildren, but they've given me the opportunity and allowed me to raise them as my own. I tell you, our relationship is so close. My kids, they're never embarrassed to give their papa a kiss in public. They always come up, give me a kiss and hug. And they go, who's that? They go, hey, look just like you. Like a lot of people mistaken my Jonathan or even my Adrian or Bradley, Dave, one of them, when we stand together, pictures, go, oh, your kids looks just like you. And then when I tell them the story, he goes, no, that's only my stepsons. It's just Charlie would never know. And it's just, the good Lord has blessed me with beautiful stepchildren. They gave me beautiful grandchildren. And I'm the luckiest man in the world, and it all starts from our patriarch of our family, Stephanie. And so with
Yeah.
you, you got the beautiful pet. That's
Yeah.
the foundation. That's your rock, brother. That's the rock.
Well,
Yep.
yeah, no doubt about that. And
Mhm.
when like I talked to my son right before I got on the show, I talked to my son. And of course Patsy had made chicken fried rice and chicken long rice for Baron, and not just Baron, but his roommate. So they were eating at the
Mhm.
table when I called, and we were talking about all kinds of things. And then at the end of every phone call with my son or my daughter, we say, I love you. And I always wondered, my son, Mr. Macho Man, Mr. Bodybuilder, big dude, all his muscles, does he have the courage in front of his peers to say, I love you on the phone? Or will he say, me too? You know? But no, my son and my daughter, no matter where they're at, no matter who they're with, when we end the call, we say, love you. And they say, love you. And that is beautiful. So,
Yep.
Nikki still she's got a long road yet. She's still is very winded, very tired, but the fact that she's now eating tells me that she's on her way. She has an appointment with her doctor on Friday. So I will tell you this, people, this would have never happened without all of your prayers.
Yep.
Charlie, you know this, Charlie, we get the best village. And if not for all of you with the mega prayers, and even some of the people that don't watch our show but heard, and they were sending prayer circles all over the place. I just want to say thank you, folks, man. I got to tell you, it was a scary week, but I feel a whole lot better now, especially since mommy is with her daughter. And and you know what Patsy did? Real quick, Darrah's in the waiting room, bring him right in. But to get her to walk, she bought scratch cards from the store. So she says, you're not gonna get a scratch card until you can walk out and come get it. So she's up to $36 on the scratch cards. And Patsy's an innovator. Anyway, thank you all guys for letting me share my appreciation and my love for all of you, and of course my wife and my daughter and my son and all that mushy stuff. But that's why I'm in such a better mood today than I was yesterday. And I just want to thank you all. Tonight we got Dr. Darragh O'Carroll. Many of you know him.
Been a while. It's
Been a
been a
long while. Dr. O'Carroll left. I mean, he disappeared. He was still working, but we didn't see him. And I was like, man, and just out of the blue, last week I saw a post and I said, he's back, and sent him shot him a real quick message. And he said, absolutely. So we got him on tonight. This guy is amazing. And I was like, man, and just out of the blue, last week, post and I said, Darragh's been watching. My God, he saw us. He saw us. Got him on tonight. Hello.
Am I good now? That was my fault. I think
no, it's not your fault. I just know you had hear all the mushy stuff. But
hey, this guy is gonna be, this guy is he's gonna tie the knot pretty soon, or if he hasn't already done. But you gotta tie the knot pretty soon, right?
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Yeah, I finally found
congratulations,
a lady who can stand me. So.
Well, Doc, it's been a while, my friend. I've been following your posts. You again, man. You just never stop working. And for those of you, and for us too, because I have no idea what you're doing right now. I know you're back in Hawaii because I recognize that beautiful view. Mm-hmm. What are you doing now, Darragh? What are you? Where are you at, and where are you working? What are you doing?
Sure. Yeah, I'm still working part-time at Kuakini Medical Center in the in Honolulu. Haven't had a shift there in a little bit, but doing some work on the mainland and also some writing and consulting, and just really trying to stay up with Delta virus as much as possible. So that's the main thing I'm doing. And also, I have a hat on today because I'm just trying to remain casual, because a lot of this week has just been infuriating, bashing my head against the wall of the inaction.
Doc, before we go on, just for those that don't know you, just if you could share, I know you don't like toot your horn, whatever, but you were a consultant early on in a Netflix series. You want to share a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry. It was a series that was filmed throughout 2018 and 2019 called Pandemic, and it was about mostly influenza, but a little bit about Ebola, but the pathogenic potential of pandemic viruses. And so I was a consultant to tell the production team, like, these are plausible storylines. And then the second thing was to be kind of a cast consultant. So I had a good couple of conversations with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Rick Bright, recommended them as people to follow, but I'm sure the production team is kicking themselves because they said Dr. Fauci is a bit too administrative, but he would have been a perfect person to follow. But anyway, so because of that, I was a bit up on respiratory viruses and things of that nature.
And the only reason I bring that up is I want our viewers, especially the newer ones, that because it's been a while, this guy knows his shit, all right? Plain and simple. He knows his shit, and that's why we welcome you here. And I am excited. I'm going to sit back, fasten my seatbelts, bro, and listen to you, my man.
Okay. I think you guys know me. I like slide presentations, and if that's okay, it helps me kind of formulate what I want to discuss, and also visuals never hurt. So let's see if I can share my screen. There we go. Sharing. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. How's that view there?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So if you guys haven't watched Dr. Tim Brown's lecture, I highly, highly recommend that. He covers A to Z what Delta virus is doing and is changing. I'm going to touch on a few topics here, but also relate it more to Hawaii focused. We do know that COVID's first basic reproduction number was around 2 to 3. And what is that? That is, your viewers are very educated, but just to remind everyone, is that basic reproduction number is how many people is the average person that go on to infect others. We see that the Delta virus is 2 to 3 times as contagious as the original Wuhan strain that came out. Part of that is because the virus levels just skyrocket much faster than we've seen in prior strains. And you guys, I know all your viewers are really up to date on all the latest science. So I just want to framework that at the moment. What happened here in Hawaii thus far over the last 18, 20 months? So we've had, the pandemic started in March of 2020. We had our big surge here in August of 2020, and we had our stay-at-home order issued around the end of August, right here where this arrow points. And we had a plateau of cases, right? And then it came down, and we had our winter surge. And then now we're in this massive, massive surge that we haven't seen before. This is all Delta, and also because we're, pretty wide open with no restrictions on gatherings whatsoever, really. But this is the level where we instituted restrictions or the stay-at-home on Oahu, about a year ago. And what does that look like hospitalization number? And so this is the August hospitalization number, this peak here, and this is the beginning of our current hospitalization number. And just looking at it, and I don't know if this is just an observation I'm having. I don't know if it's data reporting or what's happening, but you can see that there's a peak in hospitalizations, and then they'll have a bunch of discharges, or they catch up. Then they'll have a peak, and then there's less, a peak, and then there's less. I don't know if that's a data reporting thing or what's going on. If you look at the current surge, it's all full, right? Like, this is just so many hospitalizations are occurring that there's no chance for the hospitals in our state to really kind of catch up with regards to COVID hospitalizations. And so this is the point here, right around the end of August, when Oahu issued a stay-at-home, right? And our hospitalizations didn't stop there. They increased, because we do know hospitalizations lag case loads by about a week to 2 weeks, or roughly around 10 days to 2 weeks. And so they peaked all the way up at 315. We're up at 328, I think, of somewhere around today, but we haven't, this is a point where we stopped a year ago, but we haven't even put on the brakes. We hit the wall already. Our ICUs are full. Our ERs are full, because when there's nowhere to put really ill, sick people, and this isn't just COVID patients, but this is any type of medical emergency, sepsis, blood infections, heart attacks, strokes, traumas, we've got to hold them in the ER until there's room upstairs. Right. So this is what this looks like to me. So this is kind of like we've hit the wall, and we didn't even put the brakes on yet, and I guess we're going through the wall, and we're going to hit something else. I don't know what really the strategy is here. What I hear a lot is, hey, the UK, the hospitalizations weren't that high. And I'll give them that in the Delta wave. So let's look back. This is case numbers up here, and this is hospitalizations numbers in the UK. And so a lot of people are expecting us to kind of burn out real quick. But I have a theory that is plausible, that I don't think we're going to burn out as quick as the UK did. And here's why. Is the UK had a lot of infections in the winter, right? Really, really, really big amount of infections. And then they had the vaccine developed, and they had restrictions, and case numbers went down, but they correspondingly had a lot of hospitalizations. But as the Delta wave came, and in vaccinations were given to a large percentage of the UK residents, cases went up, but hospitalizations didn't. And then cases went down. But you could argue here that also school let out for the UK somewhere around here. There wasn't much schooling and school kids in the same vicinity here. So what is the difference between the UK and here? So in the UK, the normal total amount of cases was 6.3 million cases in the UK for, I'm sorry if this is blocked, a population of 66 million, right? So the percentage of people that got a positive test in the UK was about 10% since the start of the pandemic. We know that case numbers are different than true numbers, because a lot of people have asymptomatic infections, don't want to get tested, can't get tested. There's a number of different reasons, but the true numbers are about 5 times the amount of the case numbers. So in the UK, now this is just back of the envelope. You could probably poke holes in percentages here, but this is just the back of the envelope kind of calculation. About 50% of unvaccinated, I would gather, in the UK have some type of weak natural immunity that's lingering. Again, natural immunity, and I'll get into it a little bit, maybe in the next slide. Natural immunity is not nearly as good as vaccine-induced immunity, because if you don't really have a large infection or a large immune response when you do get infected, you're not going to mount a lot of neutralizing antibodies. So roughly, let's just gather 50% of the unvaccinated in the UK may have some type of lingering immunity that kept them from getting this large hospitalization number. Okay, what does Hawaii look like? So we have about 50,000 cases in total, documented cases in a population of about 1.4 million. So that what that is 3.5% of us have tested positive since the start of the pandemic. And again, we know that the true numbers are about 5 times. I've seen as high as 10 times, as low as 3 times. I just picked in the middle. 5 times the case numbers are the true numbers of infections. So that's only 17.5% of, you could gather, the unvaccinated population have some type of weak natural immunity that's lingering. So that's very different than 50% of the population of the UK. So proportionally, I think we have a lot more wood to burn or tinder to go through before this peak burns out. And what does that mean for Hawaii? Hawaii's all the way down here. I know this is very small and I apologize, but it's just one long picture. We're tied with Vermont for the least amount of ICU beds per person in the United States. 1.6 ICU beds per person. This is in 2018 per Forbes. And what are the current models showing, right? The current models are just exponential. They're just, by the end of August, we're going to have 500 COVID patients, possibly, according to these models by HIPAM, in the hospital, and ICU beds used, over 100 to 120 just COVID patients, right? And this is something I came across today. This is Dr. Daignault. He's a medical expert for CBS Los Angeles television station. And he was looking at the statewide positivity rates. And these are just very astronomical still, right? 14%, 14.6, statewide 13.5, Kauai 13.3. And what he's saying is, for those LA patients that he sees and LA friends, folks who have traveled to Hawaii recently, these are very dangerous levels of percent positivity. What he says next is, even if you're fully vaccinated, please retest you when you come home, right? So he's saying traveling to Hawaii right now with these crazy positive percentages is very, very dangerous. And I think every expert that you've had on and every expert and everybody who's on the front lines right now agrees with that. Now, to get into the rest of the talk, I want to talk about R naught just in a little bit more detail. This is the complicated math equation that I have no idea really means, but that's the math equation to calculate R naught, or the basic reproduction number. But simplistically, we can think of it in 4 different variables. And you can remember those with the acronym DOTS, or DOTS. D for duration, O for opportunity, T for transmissibility, and S for susceptibility. They all kind of sound the same, but I'll go through them real quick. Duration is the length of illness. The things that we have to combat that are some, antivirals that don't really work really well. Hopefully there's an oral antiviral like Tamiflu that we use for flu coming up a little bit later. Our monoclonal antibodies like Regeneron show to decrease the length of illness. Convalescent plasma really has just, I put it up there because people still use it, but it's really not as effective so much anymore. So that's what we have to combat duration. Opportunity is a really important variable because that's really involved of human movement and gathering and travel. So in the opportunity hierarchy, how do we decrease the amount of opportunity this virus has to transfer between person to person? So that's what, our traditional tier systems went through, is limit and avoid gatherings, limit and avoid schooling or doing hybrid learning or distance learning, limit and avoid traveling. And then in the most severe form, it would be, lockdowns, right? So that really drops down the opportunity variable to 0. And if you drop any of these down, right, it's a multiplication. If you drop anything down to 0, then R naught goes down to 0. It really plummets, right? Maybe not quite 0, but low. Transmissibility is the chance that the virus will infect another person, also known as an attack rate. So masks are very good at preventing, hey, look, the virus has the opportunity now, you're next to somebody who you don't know may be infectious, but because you're wearing a mask and they're wearing a mask, the chance that it would transmit between the two of you is a lot lower. Distancing helps with this, face shields, goggles, ventilation, and also being outdoors. And then susceptibility, The two ones that are probably the most important and are in flux is opportunity and susceptibility. And susceptibility is the percentage of population who can be infected, right? So if I have a lot of immunity, if I was just infected or if I had vaccination recently, I would not be a person who could be infected by this virus. So it would kind of skip over us, right? So the more people become infected, the less susceptible the population is on a whole to this virus. And we can artificially increase that susceptibility number by giving vaccinations. And that's why it's incredibly important. But there is always the question of like reinfection, because the common cold coronaviruses can reinfect pretty quickly. But then you throw in variants into all of this. Like, how do variants affect duration? We know the Delta variant increases viral loads sooner, and our viral loads stay higher longer. So that's increasing duration. So variants are kind of increasing that number there. Our variants, because we're having so much higher viral loads, about 1,000 to 1,200 higher viral loads compared to alpha, are the same tier systems going to have the same impact? And the answer is probably not. So we're going to have to go farther down this opportunity hierarchy to get the same type of effects. With regard to transmissibility, masks, we're already recommending if you're in an indoor environment, probably using a KN95 or N95 is probably the wisest decision, because the surgical masks are good, but they're just not really doing the same amount of filtering that an N95 can or a KN95 can when you've got so much virus around. And then susceptibility. These variants are, this Delta variant is breaking through some of not only natural immunity, but is breaking through some of our vaccine-induced immunity. And I'll go through that later too. This real quick, I know this is like a lot of boxes, but pretty easy to explain. This is 12 people that they studied in 2018 before coronavirus came out, or this coronavirus came out, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 12. They did one of those deep swabs once a week through one winter season, every 2 weeks during summer, and then once a week through the second winter season. Okay, and what they found is coronaviruses, there's 4 of them that cause the common cold. OC43 is one of them, 229E is another one, there's 2 others. But basically, they found a lot of these people were asymptomatic, maybe slight symptoms, but they were popping positive all over the place, 2 to 3 weeks later. This poor person had OC43, 229E at the same time, and then was positive for 3 weeks later. And then the following winter had OC43 again, right? So what this tells us is natural immunity to coronavirus is notoriously slippery. And so what are we seeing with vaccines now? This is data also in Tim Brown's lecture that I thought was extremely poignant, and also out of Israel, is that thankfully, up to 6 months, we're still seeing great protection from severe COVID or hospitalizations. That's all of these bars here for vaccine-induced immunity, which is what they were really made to do, is prevent you from getting sick. They were never meant to give sterilizing immunity. But what we're seeing, let's just look at the blue bar. Blue bar is people who are given a vaccine on January 21st, right? By June to July, the efficacy of preventing infection was all the way down to 16%, or preventing symptoms even was all the way down to 16%. If you take all comers, because some of these, the first people to get the infection, get the vaccines in Israel, just like here in the US, were older, immunocompromised. So there is some element there. You could just say all comers, it was about 40%, right? By the 6 to 7 months later. And if you extrapolate that, this doesn't have in this graph 8 months out. This is all the way 6 months out. 8 months out, you start to see a bit of decline in hospitalization efficacy and severe COVID-19. So that's why we're recommending, and will likely come from the FDA this week, a 3rd shot to re-up your natural immunity. So it's just like these common cold coronaviruses, right? If you've got the immunity is notoriously slippery. And so let's go back to opportunity. That had to do with susceptibility. But with opportunity, I like to, just like Libby Char said this week, like, we're on fire, right? And so I think it's a really good analogy, because every opportunity that you put into the fire is like another log, right? Bars, gyms, that's one log. Travel, that's another log. Gatherings, that's another log. Schools, restaurants, and we have all of the logs in right now. And so we are on fire, and we're seeing case numbers and hospitalizations numbers corresponding with 100% opportunity. And so it's bananas to me that we think that things are going to go down before they go up and get astronomical, right? Models are just not predicting down anytime soon. So this is something Tim also touched on, is Delta is the new baseline. And so these are just really schematics of the genetic code. And so the green part is a very important part. That's that little spike protein. And this is the Delta variant. This is the beta variant. And so these two mistakes really happened. So SARS-CoV-2, which is the COVID-19 virus, is notoriously bad at making copies of itself and makes one error every 300 to 300 copies. And so if viral loads get all the way up to 1 billion, 1 trillion just in one person, that's more than enough chances to make a mistake and hit the genetic lottery, right? So it just makes a mistake, and it's kind of experimenting in a way, like what's going to help me, coronavirus, transfer to other people? What's going to help me, replicate faster? What's going to help me make more of myself, right? And it's not thinking that way. It's not intelligent, but because it's making so many mistakes, it's evolution, it's evolving, right? So these two mistakes, they were just really mistakes. A T information was changed to a K, an L was changed to an R, and it just so happened to be advantageous. Some of these mistakes are disadvantageous, and that viral lineage is actually, goes away. But these two here with Delta have shown for the spike protein, specifically in this region where it binds to our human receptors, have shown that it binds real tight. And this other third mutation over here, P681R, kind of fools our immunity a bit more than the original strain. And in beta, they have two different mutations compared to Delta that bind it tighter to human receptors. And it has this other one over here in OFR region that actually helps to disguise it from our own natural immunity. So what we haven't seen, both of these variants and all the other variants came across these advantageous mistakes on their own. But what we haven't seen is something called recombination. And that's when two viruses infect the same person, infect the same cell, and they share some of these mistakes. So that's feasible to happen. And that is something that, while probably is unlikely, is something that can happen that would cause a variant that would cause increased transmissibility to more than what we see with Delta. So Delta is the new baseline, and it can get worse from here. It also can evolve into a way where it's very transmissible, but also less deadly to us. And it just kind of what they call acquiesces into senescence, meaning it comes into something like the common cold coronaviruses, which we hope eventually it goes to before it picks up something super nasty, right? So hope that makes sense. What do we do from here? I think we have to bite the bullet and really take all the logs out of the fire and decrease the opportunity for this virus to spread. Like, we're just going absolutely the wrong direction. And I think a lot of you recognize this picture, I hope, of testing strategies, right? So if you just test once, this is a one test, you're gonna miss, you could be exposed here, and it takes 2 to 3 days for the viral load to peak to levels that you can detect. You just take one test, right? You're gonna miss this positive point in this person's infectious period. But if you test every day, you're going to catch that person when they're infectious, so they don't go on and infect other people. And so if you were to test, this was a study in June of 2020, so more than a year ago. This is equivalent of testing a whole population once. You're only going to catch not 80%, right? Not 80% of people like our state claims, but something near 30 to 40%, right? So a whole lot less. There's a recent study, which I'm really excited about, that came out in just this month, about a week and a half ago, roughly 10 days ago. And it showed what happens when you use those cheap rapid tests, which are very good at detecting when you're contagious, right? They're not good at getting those really low viral levels, but they're really good at detecting when you have very high viral levels and you're infectious to others. What happens when you give somebody lots of these 7 consecutive of these cheap rapid tests once a day, right? On their own, these cheap tests, these are the ones in orange, they don't have a very good efficacy. LFA is lateral flow antigen. It's basically kind of like a cheap pregnancy test looking antigen test. However, the black line is when you give them consecutively, right? So if you give a rapid test on day 3 after exposure, and you really want to wait till day 3 because it takes time, right, for that viral load to start. And I think this is perfect because we could keep our 72-hour pre-test, and then on the arrival, just gives everybody, returning residents and visitors, 7 $5 rapid antigen tests. And by the time you get to a week after they arrive, if they were exposed 3 days before, right? If they were exposed the day before flying, all of this is going to move out. But you're going to catch a lot of infections if you just test everyone with a cheap test, $5 a day. You're going to get very close to 90 to 100% efficacy. So that's, $5 rapid antigen test a day. That's $35 per visitor and returning resident. And we're going to filter through a ton of infections if we do that. I did mention this about roughly almost a year ago, why we should set the bar high on testing visitors. And I basically said the same thing. The basic premise is the more we screen our trans-Pacific arrivals and returning residents, the more we protect ourselves. So this is not a new concept, but I think there's more data that shows it's plausible. Our tests are a lot cheaper. They're $5. It's going to take $35 per person. That could be added to some sort of tax or room fee or airline ticket. So that's what I have for you today. And I'm just baffled that our opportunity fire is burning and nothing's being done.
Well, I think we all share your concern. I think there's a very loud battle cry right now from the people demanding. Again, last night, I talked about not hearing anything from our governor again. The governor and the mayor met last week, Friday, nothing. All they said was they were going to meet again on Monday, yesterday. They met again yesterday, nothing, crickets. We're not hearing a thing. We heard the lieutenant governor this morning talk about a possible curfew. And I'm kind of thinking that's probably what they're discussing based on what the lieutenant governor said this morning. I think this governor is going to try to get consensus, and as they all debate their islands or their counties' priorities, every single day, more and more people are going in the hospital. We heard that story tonight from the gentleman with the congestive heart failure on Oahu, and he couldn't get a bed at Queens. He needs a procedure done. He's already had several heart attacks, and I tell you, it was heartbreaking to hear him say that. He said, "I'm afraid. I am afraid that I'm not going to be able to see my children and grandchildren again. Any moment I can have another heart attack." But we're seeing all these things develop, but we're not hearing anything, except from our lieutenant governor, who's kind of entertaining the idea of a curfew. A curfew is not going to do much, right, Doc? I mean, a curfew, keeping people home at night, is not going to do much.
No, not with Delta, right? I mean, because what's going to happen is they're going to do their thing during the day, right, and interact. And if they haven't picked up the virus, they will during the day, and they're going to bring it home, right, at nighttime. So it's not going to work in a foreseeable, productive way. And like I was showing with the hospitalization numbers, 2 weeks ago was the time where we slammed the brakes a year ago, right? Granted, the people who are being admitted to the hospital are a little bit less sick, right? Because they're younger, because most of the older Kupuna population have gotten their vaccinations, majority have. But that also means that we're seeing a lot of young, sick people in the hospital, which is tragic, right? Like 30-year-olds, mothers, pregnant mothers, right? Who are suffering and passing away. Like that's something that shouldn't be happening, It shouldn't be happening in this day and age with the amount of scientific knowledge that we have, the amount of expertise that humans as a whole have poured into this pandemic. It shouldn't be happening, but it is. And the longer we stick our head in the sand and just say, hey, look, people get vaccinated. Yes, people need to get vaccinated because it is going to prevent them from getting really sick. But that's a long-term strategy, right? That takes 6 weeks to develop antibodies. You got to get one shot and then a second shot 3 weeks later, or if it's Moderna, 4 weeks later. So that's a long-term thing. That what we need now is like, we need non-pharmaceutical interventions. We can't just keep our heads in the sand and expect this is just going to blow over, because it's just going to keep getting higher. And I just don't understand it.
I think neither of us do. I mean, I don't think any of us do. It just that there seems to be no plan. I'm not sure. I think one of the logs was travel. And I get really frustrated when people try to put the blame on the local returning resident. We know we don't have to be reminded every day that our locals are going away and coming back with virus. No one's disputing that. What we are disputing is the 2% visitor rate, the fact that these visitors aren't getting tested. And we're saying to test every traveler coming into Hawaii, not just visitors, not just residents. So I'm afraid that, and this is the question, Doc, based on your charts, based on that hospitalizations compared to last year where they had gaps for whatever reason, I tend to think it's probably more data reporting, but nonetheless, we don't have that anymore. That bar or that graph is solid. Even if we went into some type of mediation or mitigation, lockdown or whatever, we still got a ton of virus that's got to cycle through.
Yeah.
And we're not ready for that.
No, and it baffles me that how is it tolerable that our strategy is to just make more room for sick people, right? Rather than prevent people from getting sick. Like, prevention is always the key to keep misery away. Like, and it just pains me to, like, every day we wait, we're just letting more and more people fall ill. And how is it that, like, all right, let's just bring in 500 respiratory therapists and nurses. We're not bringing in any other physicians. I'm not saying we don't, that physicians are the most important, but like, our physicians are also stressed really thin. Our physicians are not getting any relief. And so that's concerning to me as well. But how is it a tolerable strategy in a modern country that we just let more people get sick? Like, how, I don't understand it. And I understand the reverse of economic consequences. I understand that as well. But right now, our pendulum is just wide open completely towards economic health. And public health is just flailing in the wind. Everybody's just flailing right now. And some sense of sanity needs to come back into the conversation, because that CBS LA expert, he's looking at the positivity numbers and he's like, hey, anybody who goes to Hawaii, make sure you really get tested on the way back, even if you're vaccinated. Like, that's how high the numbers are here, but we're just like, we're gonna wait. I don't know. I just don't get it. I really don't.
Well, one thing that I keep on looking at is we have enough data right now. By doing nothing, we have an increase in numbers. It's on the records. So if any person, even a lay person that doesn't know anything that you just said, Doc, they can see numbers rising on its own. And that's by doing nothing. So then the flip side to that equation is, when you do nothing and you've got more infections, at some given point, there'll be a critical mass when there'll be wall-to-wall infections, right? Then and only then we'll start to see the reality for those who think that maybe this is going to die out on its own. You might not have enough people to sustain our economic engine. It's just going to have so much sickness. Nobody's going to be at work. We already faced that with the unemployment, right? What an unemployment, when you throw out monies as high as what unemployment did, where you can't get workers back to go to work. And therefore, those kind of services cannot be provided. Now you replace that with sick people that can't go back to work. So where is the balance in all of this? There's really none. And I think the sooner they understand that by doing nothing, I would have suspected that if nothing was done and the numbers teeter-totted, they started to fall, then that we could say with some sense of certainty that hey, look like it's gonna nosedive, right? The virus is gonna take a nosedive. But the virus is not showing anything of that sort right now. And it just keep on facing upwards. So that's why I think that the sooner we all understand that if we don't do nothing, if we don't act upon it to steer it away from where it wants to go, we know that it wants to go higher. We got to steer it away from that. And I think that's what the point that you're making. It's very hard to understand that in this day and age, with the technology that we have, with the brains of a lot of these medical doctors and scientists that we have, and a lot of the advice that many experts around the world have given, this state for some reason, and I don't know for whatever reason, seems to just ignore and says, we'll just do it a curfew.
Right. And the other thing they're ignoring, the data is clear that vaccines allow, right? I went through that. Vaccines allow you to get infected, right? They're really good at preventing people from getting sick and hospitalized, right? But it's no longer, if the cat's out of the bag, right? That our immunity is waning. It's not that we were falsifying the information. It's just that we're now seeing the new data that our immunity wanes. Delta virus levels are very high. It's breaking through that immunity. So the data is there. So we should be testing everyone, not just, you guys know how much fallacy I think the 72-hour pretest is. It misses so many people. But the data is there to change it back to let's test all the vaccinated people as well. Like we should be testing everyone. Like why are we waiting? What needs to be analyzed? It's there, the data's there.
Well, one thing that was revealed today, and we didn't see it last year, right? Because when everything started, we were very diligent about using masks, right? Using masks, social distancing. What happened to our flu season? It was almost non-existent, right? On today's news, you read all the reports, it's saying this coming flu season, there are cases like they've never seen before because it's on an upswing. What is one of the attributing factors? Everybody got really complacent. No need to use masks. Boom. Yep. Now people getting nailed with flu. Right. It's coming back.
The flu wasn't strong enough to get through all of those, non-pharmaceutical interventions, the distancing. I think normally in the United States, there's about 200 pediatric deaths. 200 kids die of flu every year, right? Just on an average flu season. That's a lot of kids just from the flu. Last year, because of all the non-pharmaceutical interventions, the masking, the distancing, we only had one in the United States, right? And so that's going to change. And the other thing, like I'm not trying to be a harbinger of nightmares, but the more viruses that are circulating around at the same time, including the common cold coronaviruses, they can infect the same person and share some genetic material and shuffle those cards. That's how the pandemic flu started in 1918. A bird infected a pig, and that gave bird flu plus swine flu into something that was very dangerous.
Doc, and I know our good friend Kale just posted a question that I had on my sheet over here that I have to ask. One of them is this crazy protocol. And I've been getting a lot of messages with this question from a lot of people. So people get exposed to a COVID positive patient. Someone is sick, and I was a COVID positive close contact. So the contact tracers call, and the first question they ask you is, are you vaccinated? Yes. Do you have symptoms? No. Okay, then you don't have to quarantine. We have a bunch of close contacts, vaccinated close contacts, and I'm talking about very close contacts that are back in the community on the advice of the Department of Health. Isn't that a very dangerous protocol? Isn't that a dangerous protocol now to allow someone that's been a close contact?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think that data is going to change. And what I've actually experienced it personally. I had a close family member test positive from a fully vaxxed person, and they're fully vaxxed, right? So fully vaxxed people can give it to other fully vaxxed people. Saw that in a great contact tracing study in Singapore. So what that means is it's going to get, if we could get it very individualistic, meaning like, when was your vaccine done, right? Do you have any comorbidities? That's what I would ask. Like, if you had your vaccine done in 2 months ago, I think you probably have a pretty high level of neutralizing antibody that you could overcome a Delta virus exposure. But like me, I got my vaccine because I'm a frontline healthcare worker, end of December and beginning of January. I'm 8 months out, right? Like, my efficacy towards contracting the virus and possibly giving it to others is, according to the data that's coming out of Israel and Singapore, who are ahead of us, not good. And so while I sympathize with the Department of Health can't move that quickly, and the CDC has to move quicker. And I think it needs to come down from the CDC first, because to make those sort of wide sweeping changes needs needs regulatory approval. And it's just big government, bureaucratic machine was never meant for speed. And I think they're just in a pandemic trying to move as fast as they can and not used to it.
Doc, I think another thing too, and I wanted you to read on this, because the prevalency of asymptomatic as opposed to symptomatic, it seems much greater. And it's because it's sort of that walking unknown, right? You don't know if you're a carrier or not. So in this day and age, when we're dealing with something that is highly transmissible, right? Airborne, of course, why wouldn't we try to put up all the stops just in case, have that just in case factor? Because it's like, when they, like, sometimes we go to these classes and they talk about terrorists, right? And they talk about suicide bombers. Well, you can't profile somebody, yet you can't see what they're carrying under their clothing either, right? Mm-hmm. And they could be wearing a vest, fully ready to blow up whatever. Isn't contracting this virus, becoming asymptomatic, the same thing as well? We can't see what's under there.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's like you said, that's a great analogy, is that the weapon is there, you just can't see it. And that's the feature of this virus that causes it to spread globally compared to the other two coronaviruses that have a higher mortality rate, right? Like MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, that's mostly out of camels, has a mortality rate of 35%. The first SARS had a mortality rate of 10%. So those are really scary viruses to get. But what prevented it from, those two viruses from going globally like this one has, is that there was very little to no asymptomatic spread, right? Like this virus, you're shedding virus before you get symptoms, and there's a 40% chance that you may not get symptoms at all. And so you're going on and you have that weapon underneath you, but you don't know it, right? And so that's the importance of wearing masks. And that's why the CDC reinstated masks because we're getting vaccine breakthrough, because there's a large percentage of people who are contagious but asymptomatic and fully vaccinated, that everybody should be wearing masks again.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't been really harping on that part. I mean, they're failing on the other elements, but I mean, the mask part, that needs to be a message. Mm-hmm. Someone Zara just asked, why are we all getting Pfizer or Moderna or AstraZeneca, which we're not getting AstraZeneca, not in America. Why are we all getting Pfizer or Moderna or AstraZeneca when they don't help with the Delta strain? They do help, right?
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. And I am not saying that they don't help. They absolutely, 6 months out, right? The Israel data says, if you got your vaccine 6 months out, 6 months ago, the chance that you are going, even if you have, you're older and you have some comorbidities, the chance that you're going to be so sick that you need to be hospitalized, or so sick that you need to be put on a ventilator, is 1 to 9, right? You're like cutting it ninefold, which is really good efficacy. But what we're seeing in the hospitals now also, right? We're seeing for every one vaccinated person in the hospital, we're seeing 9 unvaccinated. So that tells you that the vaccine is very good and very effective against Delta and preventing you from getting so sick you need to come see one of us, right? But what we're seeing now is it's not as effective as time goes on at preventing you from contracting it and giving it to somebody else. Hence, you need to be wearing a mask. So I hope that makes sense, and let me know. And I can't see the comments, and let Mel know if there's a question still there about it.
Yeah, no, I think I think the message was clear, and I just wanted to raise that because others may have gotten that impression. I didn't, but yeah, I thought it was very clear, and I think the data speaks for itself. I know there's a lot of people that, regardless of the data that is put out there, it doesn't really matter. And a lot of it is, we talked about this with Mayor Kim last night, was the trust, right? The trust with our government. People don't trust our government. People don't trust the data. And that's why we try to bring on non-governmental people, experts, so we can try to clarify some of these misconceptions and misinterpretations. Said, yeah, but I'm hearing of Americans who are double vaccinated who are dying or being hospitalized.
Sure, yeah, that it is happening, and this is the thing you need to we need to be taking to mind about anecdotal experiences or anecdotal stories. Like, I heard of somebody doing this, I heard of somebody doing that, and this happened to them. I think a perfect example I read was in Dr. Peter Hotez's book. He's out of the Baylor College of Medicine. He's a renowned vaccine developer and been a real forefront in vaccines. Really, because vaccines are the thing that have kept have actually increased humanity's life expectancy. Really, like, without vaccines, we'd still be suffering from polio, we'd still be suffering from smallpox, diphtheria, measles, mumps, rubella. Like, those are terrible viruses that we don't have with us anymore because of vaccines. But what he said, he told a story about a pediatrician who was giving a routine, like I think it was a 3-year-old vaccine shot, which is diphtheria, tetanus, and acellular pertussis, and a couple others. And so he was about to give the shot to the kid, and then he got called away to the office for some emergency or needed to answer a phone real quickly. So he put the shot down, went to answer the phone, and when he was answering the phone, that 3-year-old kid, never happened before, but the 3-year-old kid started to seize, right? So if he had given that shot when he was about to, the mother and everybody would have thought, hey, this vaccine now caused my child to have seizures, right? So that is an perfect example of an anecdotal experience that does not have, when you take on the whole, statistical relevance. And so what we're seeing is, yes, there are people who are getting vaccinated, or who are vaccinated, who are getting into the hospital. There are people who are vaccinated and dying, unfortunately. But when you look at populations on the whole, it's 9 to 1. That's what we're seeing across the board in the US, is 9 people in the hospital who are unvaccinated for every 1 who is vaccinated. And when you look at statistics, so that's important, is you got to look at statistics and stop hearing about my friend, my friend said this, my friend said that, it happened to, you got to look at like statistics with power and that have had randomized controlled trials, like, because that's not randomized. And I think that seizure example is a perfect example that, you can't take everything one off to mean gospel.
Well, let me ask you, Charlie, let me ask you this question real quick, because it's a different look at that same analogy. Is how many traffic accidents, Charlie, have you investigated in your career? Hundreds?
Yeah.
Maybe 1,000? How many of,
Yeah.
I mean, we both have, and you go to an accident and you see a fatality, and someone the person that died was wearing their seatbelt. Was wearing their seatbelt, but unfortunately, because of the seriousness of the accident, they didn't make it. Statistically, across the across the country, let's just use the country, you had a hell of a lot better chance of surviving a serious car wreck wearing your seatbelt than not. But will the seatbelt save your life in every situation? No. And I think when you look at it that way, something that you can actually relate to, that's just the reality of it. And I hate to say that, but it is what it is. But I can tell, and maybe eventually enough people will have a personal impact from a loved one or a family member that gets COVID, then maybe they'll see it differently. But it's hard to convince people that have already listened to that one person that told them that if you take the vaccine, you're gonna die, or it's causing all kinds of problems. So I don't know. I hope that helps a little bit. It's just you gotta look at the totality of the situation. Sorry, Charlie. I wanted to just ask you because I know you've seen a lot.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say was, I think this issue is so complicated in and of itself. Unless you have the time to just sit down, study the basics, and work your way up, then you'll truly understand, because a lot of it is just self-induced understanding of medical knowledge. It's like saying that, having been a police officer, gone through the training to become a police officer, and yet there's some that like to read crime story books that makes them a full-fledged detective, right? It's the same thing. Unless they know what goes into, and I used to say that when I was with the ME's office, and that is, unless you understand the forensics of it, I average in death investigations a year between 300 and 400 deaths a year. Myself, I was on the busiest shift. So every time you see a death, even though there's things around the scene that are common, you cannot assume, oh, I already know the answer, because within it lies something that's going to be totally different, that's going to bring that death totally different from the other deaths you've done. And that's what people got to understand when they look at this virus and how it's reacting, looking at the vaccine and how it reacts. You can't just label it and say this. And so when somebody takes the vaccine and they get sick from it, it's not everybody getting sick from it. There's something else within that individual that took the vaccine and got sick that we got to look at and understand why that person got sick from it. And so, and it's because of that, I think that puts a strain that if someone has a louder voice and is much more convincing when they're passing the message, they could lead a lot of people from getting the right information to go down the rabbit hole to information of wrong. And that's a sad thing. And I think what we're trying to do, and I hope the folks understand out there, having having Darragh with us and having him share his experience, it will kind of help you understand from his perspective what he sees and gives a better view of what we should be looking at as well. But again, the information is out there for you to take. You don't want it. You don't have to watch this program. You can turn the channel, as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what people need to understand, that everybody has a choice. So not to get off the subject, but we also hear people getting the choice that, hey, it's my body. I can choose whether I take the vaccine or not. I agree. But yet, please understand that if you get sick and you're trying to speed up the process to get unsick, it ain't gonna work that way. You're gonna be told, sorry, nature is gonna let you ride it out. Then maybe the next time you'll think before acting upon something that you said, I don't need to take the vaccine.
Sure. Yeah, two common misconceptions that I get with natural immunity is a lot of people feel that natural immunity, I'm going to get a better response, right? I'm going to build my natural immunity to this virus rather than vaccine induced. But what I was speaking about earlier in the presentation is that these viruses, they love to hide from our immune system. And that's what causes infections, right? They slip by. Whereas a vaccine, all it is just one part of the virus. It's not the whole virus. So there's not enough mechanisms and chemical messengers that the virus sends out to slip by. It's just that little spike protein. That's it. There's nothing fancy. There's a lot of things fancy about it, but when it comes to immunity sake, there's nothing fancy about it. Right. So what are the statistics saying? Like there was a recent study that came out. All right. So they followed 400 people. It was around 450 people or so who were infected sometime in 2020. It was like March to December of 2020. Then some of those people got vaccinated and some didn't. And they followed them to see, all right, was there a difference in the reinfection rate? Well, there was a very statistically different. The people who did not get vaccinated were 2.3 times more likely to get reinfected than those who did. And these were all people who had previous infections, right? But around half of them decided to, all right, well, I'm going to get a vaccine because I want my immunity to be as strong as possible. So what does that mean? That means that the people who got reinfected probably gave it on to somebody else that they didn't know, right? So that's how we want to keep the spread down. Is vaccine-induced immunity is not only safer because you're not getting all the complications of this virus and giving it to other people, but it's also helping to just flatten this curve and keeping you safe as well from getting into the hospital. So it's just the other one. I'm sorry if I'm droning on here, but the other one is there's a lot of young, healthy people who are saying, look, I wanted my athletes to stay healthy. Either they're very good high school athletes wanting to get into Div 1 scholarships, and they're saying, look, I don't want to get sick. I don't want the vaccine because it's going to, they hear that it causes heart trouble. Yes, it can, but very, very rarely. So what the statistics show from the vaccine is that in young males, this was all in Big Ten athletes, they followed them. They found it was about 2,500 Big Ten athletes that got infected with COVID. They found 2.3% of them had inflammation of the heart. It's called myocarditis. 2.3%. That's 23,000 in a million. What is the rate of heart inflammation in the vaccine in young, healthy males? It's 0.004%. It's like 40 in a million. It's way, way less. So somebody hangs on to that instance. Well, I heard, so-and-so's son or daughter who's an athlete got the shot and they got heart inflammation. So I'm not going to get it for my son or my athlete or my daughter because I want them legitimately. So we want to do what's right for our kids. And we're all concerned. But what that means is you have, I don't know what I can't do the math in my head that quick, but it's 23,000 in a million if you get COVID to get heart inflammation versus 40 in a million. It's way, way, way less if you use the vaccine. So that's another example.
Joni's question is, why does he think that vaccinated people can't spread the virus? The doctor never said that. The doctor specifically said that vaccinated people can spread the virus.
Yes, yeah, and it's proportional to how long ago you got the vaccine. And we're seeing, 6 to 8 months out is roughly the time where you should probably get a repeat shot. What it's great at doing is keeping you from getting so sick you get into the hospital.
The other thing, right, Mel, is we all got to learn habits, right? We got to do safe habits. Wear your mask, right? And so when I think of habits, it's like those guys that say, hey, I'm an athlete. I run every day, 5 miles a day, right? Healthy habits. Yet, when you don't see them, when they power run, they go change. They go around the building in the back, and they light up on cigarette. That's a habit.
Yeah, a lot of healthy people got COVID, unvaccinated. My son's best friend, NFL All-Star, not mentioning names, but got COVID, got sick, ended up in the hospital. Not too many people healthier than that guy, I can tell you. Doc, I know we're running out of time, but there's a ton of questions that I kind of want to touch on. I'm going to put these questions, a bunch of questions into one.
Okay.
Johnson & Johnson, not much is said about Johnson & Johnson as far as the Delta. Mixing vaccines, we know now Pfizer, the booster dose is the Pfizer. Can you mix it if you've had Moderna or J&J? And if you remember all of this, when can we expect the FDA to approve this vaccine?
To full approval. Full approval for FDA for these vaccines for Pfizer and Moderna should probably come in the next month to 2 months. I'm hearing. When it comes to mixing, they are probably not going to FDA approve them for boosters to mix. I think if you did Pfizer, you should stick with Pfizer. If you did Moderna, you should stick with Moderna. Briefly explaining the two, they both, if what mattered was the clothes in the suitcase, they both have the same clothes in the suitcase. They deliver the same thing. That's the mRNA, the thing that matters. The suitcase might be a little bit different. The Pfizer is a little bit more fragile. That's why it has to stay colder. But that's the only difference. It's just that little envelope outside of the suitcase that it's in. When it comes to J&J, yeah, the J&J efficacy towards Delta is not as great as the mRNA vaccines. So they are likely pushing and going to approve a booster shot for J&J, which again is just single. So I think that was all of them. I'm not sure if yeah.
And then the $1 million question. I mean, I'm almost afraid to ask, but I will because our viewers have asked, and it is one that I get asked a lot about ivermectin.
Sure.
A lot of people are out there saying that they're taking ivermectin and that ivermectin is the secret weapon for Delta. What is your thoughts? What does the science say?
This is exactly the same situation we were with in hydroxychloroquine, right? There was people saying, I'm taking it, it's keeping me safe. But that was all anecdotal. There was no statistical relevance. And when we started actually doing the statistical studies, the randomized control trials, right? Like somebody was taking a pill where they didn't know if it was hydroxychloroquine and they didn't know if it wasn't, right? So that removes the placebo effect because the placebo effect is real. If you take a pill that thinks it's going to help, you think it's going to help you, it can. I'm not saying go take hydroxychloroquine or anything like that. If you take anything that you think is going to help you, it has a placebo effect. But when they started to filter out those differences and statistical relevance, they found actually harm with hydroxychloroquine, right? And it's actually hydroxychloroquine is a very dangerous medication to have around children because it's in the one pill that can kill club. So if it was to accidentally get ingested by a child, it's one of the things that can actually kill them before they get to the ER by causing heart arrhythmias. Ivermectin is a bit safer when it comes to that, but there's no statistical studies that show that it works in any sort of way yet at all. And I'm not even going to say yet, it's just everything that's looked at it has not shown that it's beneficial. And so you're wasting your money, and there's also some side effects with ivermectin. And I don't work for pharma. I promise. Like I would tell you, I don't have any sort of stock in any pharmaceutical or testing or any medical. I don't even own stock in anything other than in my house. That's it. But there's no benefit to ivermectin that we can see at this time.
It reminds me that some people, and I have family members too, that say that if they take a shot of noni every day, right, in the morning, they swear by it. So it really boils down to is how much you convince yourself what you're taking is the one that's gonna help you the most, right, Doc? Because that's what it sounds like.
Right. I mean, to a limit. You could think that smoking a cigarette is going to help you defeat COVID, and it's not going to. But ivermectin, the placebo effect is real, but it's temporary, right? And I'm not saying like if you believe in ivermectin, you should take it. That's not. I hope that's not what you heard. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in order to put everything on the same playing field, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Tamiflu, all the other medications that we've tried, steroids, like to put them on the same playing field to get rid of placebo effect, you have to randomize it. And if you're just taking it, you're not randomizing anything. So that's how science and treatment efficacy is found. Is you got to do the proper trials, and all the proper trials that have been done on ivermectin show no benefit at all.
And I think that's where the problem lies. The internet is a great thing, but just some people have a hard time trusting the science because it's goes against what they have been told by uncle or auntie. I don't understand. I mean, there are very few people, experts. In fact, I don't think there's any experts right now that will come out and say that that we shouldn't be taking a vaccine, unless again they get those health issues. Maybe you cannot for health issues, religious issues, but there are some that have just bought into this crusade that this is microchipped and that the government is going to track you and those are the ones that I think really need to listen to the science and hopefully these shows like with you on and we've had a lot of people. I won't say a lot, but for me 3 or even 4 is a lot when they heard our guests and decided to go run out and get the vaccine the next day. Those are the kinds of people that we're talking to. Those of you that are on the fence that just waiting to get that right nugget to make you feel comfortable to go get the vaccine. Because we really gotta get everyone as much as possible anyway to get vaccinated. But that's not gonna stop the surge that we have right now.
No.
And I think that is the scary part. Doc, it is 8:03. I appreciate you here. I'll give you a moment to share whatever you want with our viewers. We got a lot of people that want you back on already.
All right. Well, it's good to be back. Thank you. That's very kind. Yeah, what I would do is what Lee Altenberg is saying, what John Dworkin is saying, what Tim Brown is saying is like, act like there's a lot of virus out there. Act like you have it. Do what's right for your family. Wear your masks and be safe and don't do anything outrageous at this time because our positivity rates are very dangerous. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from a doctor in LA who's looking at us and telling his patients, be careful and let's do a lot of testing when you come back to us. So I would do those same things and just be very safe out there. Stick to your families, your pods, and wear masks when you're out in places that you can't be away from other people.
Thank you, Doc. Charles.
Well, I wanted to show you this. You seen one of these before? Right here?
What's that?
Is that jump drive?
No. This is a microchip I took out of my arm when I got.
Of course, they used the big one on you, Charlie.
This is the Portuguese microchip I took out.
Hey, whoa, hey.
Whoa.
Hey.
You saw Mel take a step back, but anyway, it is just a pleasure, my friend, my brother, to have you back on with us. We were kind of worried. We thought you went to parts unknown, including ours, because we just couldn't get a hold of you. But getting a hold of you and listening to all of this, it's informative. It gives people that option to say, hey, study what he says. Hey, maybe there's some, and for those of you that love to Google a lot, Google what he said. And, because as long as we've had Dr. O'Carroll on with us, we know with certainty everything he said has been pretty straight up. There's been no sugarcoating about it. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all that you've shared with our people. And to our viewers out there, all I can say is this. If you feel that you got a microchip, dig it out, get it out fast, and keep it on your nightstand. And you might be able to use it as a jump drive sooner or later. Take care. Brother Mel, back to you.
Rosie Marsh, she says nobody ever answers her questions. I did not see your question, Rosie. I apologize. If you can put it in there before in the next minute.
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
He's still here. So if Rosie, if you pop that question, Charlie, can you watch? I don't know how I missed it. I'm trying to get the message. And if you ask the question that he already answered in the presentation, that I'm trying to go to questions that he didn't cover. So I apologize. So Rosie, I'm sorry, it wasn't intentional. I have no idea. I didn't see it. And it's about 600 or 700 comments. So I just want to say this, guys, I hope the science you heard tonight, I hope the facts that you heard tonight will help you make a decision or help you convince. You see, you can come back to this. And now we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. So you can have someone watch this on YouTube if they're interested in facts and science. Or if they're interested in the microchip thing, then just fast forward to Charlie's closing, and it's very clear that these damn chips are huge. But seriously, and I see a lot of comments every day, some hurtful comments, some personal comments that from people that don't believe in vaccinations against people that believe in vaccinations and vice versa. I think my message really are to those of you that are on the fence, and that you're, like my son was and my daughter was, and they didn't have these issues of microchipping, but they just weren't comfortable yet. But think about, if you're on that fence, and think about or have some empathy, even if you don't believe in vaccines, when you post, before you post, have some empathy for those people that are sick or their families that are trying to take care of, cannot even see their sick loved ones because of COVID, because of Delta. Have some empathy for those people before you start putting stuff out on Facebook, because it's a scary disease. And there's a lot of people right now that cannot see their loved ones. And there's a lot of COVID patients that are very scared. So please, people, have some empathy. Listen for the science. Listen to the science. I encourage everyone to do the due diligence. I mean, no one wants to put something in their body if it's not safe, but do the due diligence and stop with the University of Google research projects. And I told somebody the other day, if you type in reasons not to take the COVID vaccine and that's all you read, then it's going to scare the crap out of you. But if you're going to do that, make sure you also Google, why should I get the vaccine? All right, and listen to the facts. And that's my message for tonight.
Here's the question, Mel. I think Rosie Marsh, I think this is the question she was asking regarding the variant, and because it's transmissibility. If I just lost it, but if I could remember, if you can catch it, when somebody has an open window and somebody above you is infected, and there's a possibility that
Sure.
can you catch it that way?
Yeah, there have been some reports of, or not, I don't think they are legitimate reports of people picking it up within seconds of being around somebody. I don't think that's true. And it depends. It sounds like it's a 2-level,
Yeah.
maybe on different floors.
Yeah,
Right.
it's right here. It says, I was wondering if somebody had COVID that lives above you
Yeah.
and they have their window open, can the virus come down into your window?
Yeah.
So during the day, I would say absolutely not, because sunlight, UV light, kills this virus pretty well. What I would that doesn't mean that it's okay to hang out outdoors. It takes a little while, but for it to go out a window and come back in, that takes a little while. So during the day would be less. Nighttime, look, if the person's sitting right by their window and they're just wanting to get out, right, because they've been in quarantine for how long and they're just breathing out the window, look, that's plausible. Do I think it's likely? I don't think so. If you want to limit the chance, I know it's kind of hot, it's summertime, close your window to limit any chance. I don't think you should run up there and knock on the door and tell them to close theirs, but to limit any chance, just to close yours, I think would be the best advice I could give.
Awesome. Sorry about that, Rosie. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, sorry, Rosie.
Yeah. And
No,
to
no,
Melissa.
not you.
Yeah. And to my Mahanite daughter, Melissa Bolton. I just got word that your 4 bottles of None is ready. I'm taking it off the roof. It's been in the sun all day, and I know how much you just love it. So I'll be sending some to you. All that jelly and everything inside, I'm gonna send it off to you, Melissa.
Okay, I got it. Rosie, I see what you're concerned. Yeah, she's saying that the first day that they tested positive, they went out, took the dog out for a walk without a mask. Yeah, unfortunately, some people, so you just got to protect, you wear your mask, you stay indoors,
Yep.
you protect yourself. I said this many times. If we all do what we're supposed to do, the number of cases are going to drop tremendously. Is it going to completely wipe it out? No, but it's going to drop tremendously to a place where we can manage so that if that car accident happens, if that heart attack happens, God forbid, when they
Yeah.
get taken to the hospital, there's a room and medical personnel that can help them. I mean, that's all our kuleana. That's all of our kuleana. We got to do what we got to do. I put this up again. I call it a personal lockdown, but it really isn't a personal lockdown. It's, do what you have to do, protect yourself, your loved ones, in our community. That's what I got to say. So anyway, Doc, thank you again.
Thank you guys.
Welcome back on the show. I'm sure we'll have you back on soon. You guys,
Yeah.
everybody take care. I don't know what we're doing tomorrow night, Charlie.
Well,
We
I'm gonna share with everybody how to detect a microchip. I'm gonna share half an hour.
And tomorrow, Charlie will be all by himself. I'm taking the night off. All right, guys. All right, you guys, stay safe. God bless. We love you all. Stay safe. Stay safe. Stay safe. Stay safe. And don't forget, share this with everybody you know.
Aloha.